Thank you. It is my absolute honor to be a member of Parliament for Markham Unionville. With me today is my good friend and the MP for Thornhill, Honourable Peter Kent.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bob. And it's wonderful to be here with you and to serve in the Conservative caucus as one of the Conservative members for the GTA. We did have close to 1,200 people registered for tonight's event. Congratulations to those of you who made it through the snow. Others will be trickling in as the evening continues. We do have at least one member of our Conservative caucus here as well, Leona Alislev, the member for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill. Garnet Genuous from Edmonton, we believe, is somewhere either circling over Toronto Pearson or being de-iced at Winnipeg International Airport. Senator No also was hoping to be out tonight, but I think he has also fallen afoul of the weather. Anyway, and Bob, a number of our provincial colleagues are here as well. Can you tell us who they are?
Absolutely. Minister Rod Phillips is here. Minister Raymond Chu is here. Vincent Key, MP, is here. Aris Bobakian is here. I just saw. And some of those new faces are here with us today. Let's start with David Kong, Scarborough North.
And the next MP for Willowdale, Daniel Lee.
Next MP for Etobicoke Centre, Ted Opis.
The next Member of Parliament for Hamilton Mountain, Peter Jakowski.
Next MP for Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas, Bert Lorenzo.
And the upcoming MP for Scarborough Centre, Irshad Chaudhry.
Next MP, my good friend from Markham Thornhill, Alex Ewan.
And the next Member of Parliament for Mississauga, for University Rosedale, Helen Claire Tingling.
Next MP for Markham Streetsville, Gada Malik is here.
For Scarborough Agincourt, the next MP, Sean Hu.
Next MP for Brampton North, Arpan Khanna. Still stuck on 407.
And the next MP for Toronto Centre, Ryan Lester.
Peter, we also have a couple of Henny Talifs, Mississauga Iron Mills. One more, Ramona Singh, Brampton East.
And now, if we could introduce to all of you our three Don Valley candidates. First, Sarah Fisher from Don Valley North. Come on in, Sarah.
Next MP for Don Valley West, Yvonne Robinson.
And the Member of Parliament in October for Don Valley East, Michael Ma. Well, Bob, I think you'll agree that our party is in great shape for the upcoming election. And of course, it's hugely due to people like all of you who made it out to join us here tonight. It's also because, unlike the Liberals, we have a leader in Andrew Scheer who truly understands the importance of hard work and who inspires others with his dedication and his leadership.
Absolutely. Since being elected a little over 3 years ago, it has been my absolute pleasure to get to know Andrew Scheer as a colleague and as a friend. But it has been more exciting to see Andrew steps into the leadership of this party, and now all of Canada is getting to know what a remarkable person and leader we have in the Conservative Party.
Well, that's right, Bob. Andrew was the youngest ever member of Parliament elected to be Speaker of the House of Commons. And with 5 children, you can be sure that he is ready to handle anything. And he will be the next Prime Minister of Canada. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome the Honourable Andrew Scheer.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. What a pleasure to be here in Toronto in the GTA. I am so excited to be here with you this evening, and what a great crowd. Thank you so much for braving the weather tonight. Holy smokes, I had to get all the way from Mississauga to Don Valley, and the roads weren't so good. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for braving the weather. Typical Canadian January evening. And I want to pay a special note of thanks to our local candidates who are going to be carrying the flag for the Conservative Party in the next election. We've got Michael Ma from Don Valley East. Yvonne Robertson from Don Valley West. And Sarah Fisher from Don Valley North. So big round of applause for our Don Valley candidates in the next election. So, ladies and gentlemen, tonight I don't have a big, long speech to start off with. I wanted to get to as many questions as we can from you. I know a lot of you have come here tonight. You've got concerns, you've got issues you'd like to bring up. Perhaps you voted for a different party in the last election, but now you're looking at changing your vote. You're looking at what's on offer. And this is the best time to start talking about these things, because this is 2019. This is the year. This is the year that Canadians have a choice to put an end to the failed policies of this Liberal government. And it all happens in October. There's one message that I'd like all of you to think about as we go through this evening and to carry forward after this event. And that is, you are all paying for Justin Trudeau's mistakes. His failures have had real consequences. Consequences on families, on individuals, on small businesses, consequences for Canada on the world stage, consequences for our ability to trade freely with other countries. All of those things have made life more expensive in Canada. It's made life more difficult. It's created more challenges for Canadians. Justin Trudeau inherited a great fortune. I'm not talking about personally. I'm talking about the situation he inherited when he became Prime Minister. A booming global economy lifting Canada up with it. A balanced budget that Conservatives had worked so hard before to balance our budget while still lowering taxes. He inherited that situation, and what did he do with it? He squandered it. He blew through those surpluses and that balanced budget, and he's racked up billions of dollars in debt. Massive deficits that have increased the cost of servicing the national debt. And all of that means one thing: taxes are going to go up under this Liberal government. If this Liberal government is allowed to continue, those taxes will keep going up. We already know that because they've already raised taxes. They've raised taxes on small businesses and entrepreneurs, calling them tax cheats, just for wanting to create a business and create jobs and opportunity for people in their community. They've canceled popular tax credits that made life more affordable for individuals and families. And of course, they've instituted the carbon tax, a revenue plan, not an environmental plan, that is literally going to raise the cost of everything in this country. Home heating, transportation, and everything that has to be trucked in from any other part of the world. Tonight we'll talk about an alternative vision, a conservative vision that will make life more affordable for Canadians, that will make it easier for Canadians to get ahead and not just get by. A vision that includes getting back to balanced budgets, lowering taxes, and making life more affordable. A vision that unites Canadians around common principles of freedom, economic liberty, individual freedom, and respect for those who work so hard to build their community and build this wonderful country. So I'm going to get right into it, but before I do that, I wanted to give us a little bit of an opportunity to get to know our three local candidates. For those of you that live in the Don Valley area, I thought it'd be a good idea to just have a brief chat with our local candidates and then dive right into the questions. So, if you don't mind, we'll do that right now. They don't really have a choice because they've already signed up to this. So I wanted to start with you, Michael. I understand that you're an entrepreneur, that you've had a lot of different things, enterprises in your life, but you've also immigrated to Canada. Your family has come to Canada. And one of the things that I've heard a lot of when I travel around the country are new Canadians who have questions about what's going on at our border and what conservatives view towards immigration in general and how the system could work. So are you hearing those types of things? Do you want to speak to that from people that you've gotten to know as you've embarked on this campaign?
Certainly, Andrew. As a former immigrant, of course, we worked hard, we assimilate, and we are truly Canadians at the end. And what we're hearing from our fellow Canadians now is the system has broken. The borders, it's opened, people are not following rules, and created an unfair environment for all the immigrants or intended immigrants and refugees. According to Immigration and Refugee Board, those waiting lists have actually increased significantly. And despite what the Liberal government tries to say, is that on the Immigration and Refugee Board website, it actually says if you're crossing between designated port of entries, is actually a violation of the law. But they like to call it irregular. I don't know what that means.
Well, I hear a lot of that too, and one of the most frustrating things for me is hearing from people who have waited 5, 6, 7 years themselves to come into Canada the right way, the legal way, and they get frustrated when they know now that others in their family may be waiting longer because those resources are going to process illegal border crossings, not those who want to come to Canada legally. And that's the conservative principle, is that we need an immigration system that is fair, that is compassionate, that welcomes people, but that asks people to follow the law. And when we have resources going to those who are, when the government allows a situation where more and more resources go to people who are skipping the queue and jumping the line, and that has a consequence for people who are still in refugee camps waiting their turn, or people here are trying to be reunited with a loved one or a family member, that's why a conservative government will put a stop to illegal border crossings and build confidence back in our immigration system.
And it has cost us over $1 billion to do that.
So Yvonne, I've taken a look at your CV. We've had the opportunity to chat a few times. Very impressive business career. What do you think are some of the impediments that this government has put in front of entrepreneurs and those who want to start a business or expand a business here in Canada?
Thank you for the question, and thank you for having me. For over 20 years, I have built a business in Don Valley West. I export a very specialized product, and most entrepreneurs here or people who work in small businesses or in family-run businesses realize that it's hard work, and people who are trying to build a business, it's difficult, but it's a labor of love, and most business owners are true entrepreneurs and hard workers. So we dig in and we try and make a profit. And to be profitable is difficult, but with perseverance and commitment, if you're fortunate enough, you can make a little bit of money. And then recently, the Minister of Finance decided to roll out some almost punitive tax measures where they're targeting small businesses. They are disallowing now small business tax deductions. They are limiting your ability to sprinkle for all intents and purposes. It's just to spread a little bit of the profit around. They are making it very difficult for passive income to be reinvested. So for those of us who are trying to be profitable and then having no support from our tax system, it's upsetting and it's demoralizing, quite frankly, and more businesses are closing. And it's in our Canadian environment, our Canadian dollar is worth 30 points lower than the American one, and we're sourcing often in the United States for capital equipment. So what we need to do is support the small business and encourage families to continue to build their family businesses. And so I know, Andrew, that when you form government, you will be able to support us and small businesses and rekindle the spirit of entrepreneurs to dig in and help build the backbone of our economy.
Absolutely right. Conservatives fought those tax hikes so passionately because we recognize that it's not just about the over 1 million Canadians who are small business owners themselves. It's about the millions more. So many Canadians who have jobs thanks to those small business owners. All those jobs were put at risk as well. And one of the things that really frustrated me, that really got me angry, when you heard the type of divisive rhetoric, when you heard what the finance minister and what Justin Trudeau was saying to our entrepreneurs who are creating those opportunities, was that none of their changes, none of their tax hikes, none of their increases affected people who had family trusts. People who owned shares in big companies. It didn't hurt the big businesses. It didn't hurt Bay Street. It hurt Main Street. And that's why Conservatives have always stood up for the little guy. It always seems that this federal Liberal government, every time they change a tax measure or bring in a regulation, they always exempt people like themselves, and they always target hard-working entrepreneurs who are trying to build something in their community. Conservatives will put a stop to that. So Sarah, you've been nominated for a while. You've been hitting the doors. You've been going to events. Do you want to just share with some of the concerns that you're hearing at the doors, what people are telling you as they're making up their mind, as they're thinking about what might influence their vote? What are some of the things you've been hearing in your community?
So, great question, and we have been knocking on a ton of doors, and a lot of my volunteers are here, so they've been hearing the same things. And so my riding is Don Valley North. We do have a high immigrant population in the riding, and one of the biggest concerns, again, is this issue at the border, the irregular border crossers. They explain how they came here and they waited in line, they filled out the paperwork, and now there's people coming across with the sole purpose of getting arrested so they can enter our immigration system. And they're upset because their prime minister is not showing leadership on this very important issue. So it's I sympathize with them. A lot of them have family members that are trying to come over, but they're getting delayed, like you said, Michael, because of the delays. So another response that we get a lot at the doors, and again, I feel for these people, but it also makes me very excited. There are a lot of people who admit to us at the doors that they voted for Justin Trudeau last time, and they said he has let us down. I hear that over and over again, that he will not be getting our vote again.
Well, that's very encouraging. Well, Sarah, I get a lot of that myself, as I travel across the country. When I was first elected as leader of the Conservative Party, it was back in May of 2017, people would stop me and say hello, and they'd often say good luck. Good luck, we're rooting for you, all the best. Now, when people see me, when they stop me in an airport or if I'm grabbing lunch, they squeeze my arm and they dig in tight and they say, you have to win in October. We don't have... So Yvonne, Michael, Sarah, thank you very much. Thanks for introducing yourselves to the people in this community. Good luck, all the best. We're going to be working with you as we go forward into October. Now, I'd like to turn it over to you. So we have our MCs, Peter and Bob, who have microphones. And if you'd like to ask a question, just flag them down. Literally anything's open. So maybe just if you're sitting in the middle, just because it's a little bit easier, maybe if you can make your way to the sides, to the aisles, because it might be a little bit tough to get the microphones all the way through. But I'm here to answer anything, you know, any issue at all, any subject matter, anything that the federal government is responsible for or has a responsibility for, please fire away. I'm happy to deal with just about, well, with anything. So, Peter, you've got the first one there.
Get right to it. And just before we do, we left one nominated candidate for the Conservative Party from the introductions, Frank Fung from Spadina, Port York. Frank?
Excellent. All right.
But now to the first question. Your name, sir, and your question.
My name is Dr. Rana. I'm a neurologist in Scarborough. I was at a conservative program. I'm a member of Conservative Party. I go and visit people to become members. So I was at a recent event, and it was held in a Muslim majority area. There were some caucus members. The question they posed was about the move of the embassy to Jerusalem. That was one question, that what is the stance of the party? Because when we go and visit people, people are asking us, right? They had some hardships during the Harper government, and they still remember, and they're not, you know, able to shift their vote till we satisfy them. Second question was, second comment, that some of the conservative MPs, federal caucus members, they tweet and they post things which are directly confronting or demonizing the Muslim community. GTA has integral part of Muslim community, GTA has. For example, one of the federal MP, I would not name them, so they said that they were calling on the global community to eradicate the guardianship law when this Saudi girl, you know, liberal issue, you know, liberal did, you know, this, you know, issue of giving refuge. So she said that we should join together to remove this law. This is a religious law of Judaism and Muslims. And I think, you know, confronting a religion directly is, I don't think is a wise idea. So I would like you to comment on those two issues.
Well, I appreciate the question. It gives me an opportunity to talk about a conservative position on a specific issue and then a more general issue. First of all, on the embassy in Israel, I have been very clear that a conservative government would recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. That is... To me and to many Canadians, it's very simple. If you were going to go to speak to the president or the key officials in Israel, if you're going to speak to the Israeli parliament, if you're going to hear a case before the Israeli Supreme Court, you would be in Jerusalem, because that is where all those institutions are. That is where the government is. There has not been a serious peace proposal that does not include the recognition of that. So that is my position. I believe it is a recognition of fact. While we can still work, we absolutely should still work to help broker a peace solution, that I do believe that is an integral part. It has been the historical capital of the Jewish people and of Israel for millennia, and that is something that a conservative government will recognize. When it comes to the relationship between the Conservative Party and the Muslim community in Canada, we have a very inclusive approach to all Canadians. We have members of our parliament. We have the first Muslim member of parliament was a Conservative member of parliament. We have the first Pakistani senator is Senator Tulajan, the Conservative senator. So we embrace people from all faiths, from all walks of life, from all backgrounds. We don't differentiate between one group or another. We make principled positions based on our values, and we embrace everyone who wants to help us build that type of Canada. So there are many issues that we can work with people from every different community, and that we find our policies are resonating with. And some of the things that we offer people of the Muslim faith is that it's the Conservative Party that stands up for true freedom of thought, of belief, of religion. It's the Liberal government that has put things like a values test on Canadians to force one particular belief or worldview on Canadians who are trying to access government programming. We reject that because we value people who have all religious faiths or no faith or any faith, because we believe in that individual freedom of people and their beliefs that they hold dear.
Ladies and gentlemen, we also have a Stella Ambler, Mississauga Lakeshore. She was stuck for an hour and a half on 407. We have Neil.
Yes.
So Neil, 30-second question. We want to make sure we can get as many questions as we can.
Thank you. Neil Kazin from Humber River, Black Creek. I heard wonderful ideas about how unfortunately Justin Trudeau let us down on business and on immigration. He also let us down on infrastructure, which last election he ran big on it to justify tens of billions of dollars in deficit. Ultimately, he produced nothing, and the deficit multiplied 3 times. I hope your campaign will focus on it. And if you need help, I am willing to help. I have 47 years experience in it, retired recently, so I have no personal interest. I volunteered for PC Ontario for 6 years at Queen's Park on this topic, and I volunteered for Engineers Canada. Now, I also led Eglinton Line Structure. I know a few things about their failures, which you can hunt him with at a debate. I would like to talk to you. He really hugely deficient in it. GTA got nothing during the past 4 years, 0. And the deficit tripled. We should tap into it.
Well, thank you. Absolutely. I visited the Mississauga area a lot from growing up. My family is actually from Cawthra Road, Mississauga, so Stella Ambler's riding. And this is a huge economic engine of our country. Large numbers of people having to cross on the 401 through into downtown Toronto. And it's clear that infrastructure is a key priority for people in the GTA and in many cities all across Canada. The ability to drink clean water, the ability to make sure that you can get to work, that we have a wide variety of means to improve traffic and commute times in our cities is a key issue for many Canadians. And Justin Trudeau promised to make massive investments in that. In fact, that was the rationale, as you pointed out. The justification for the teeny tiny temporary deficits that he was going to bring in. Remember just those $10 billion just for a few short years. All of that was justified by increases in infrastructure spending. But report after report shows that the money's not flowing out, the projects aren't getting built. And yet, those deficits have ballooned to $30 billion, up to $30 billion according to the last Parliamentary Budget Office. So we're getting the worst of both worlds. We're getting the massive deficits, which increase taxes and payments, interest payments on the debt, but not the investments that we need to get people moving across cities. So the Conservative Party takes a much different approach to the Trudeau Liberals. We actually believe that the dollars should flow, that shovels should get in the ground, and projects should get built. And I've already had a number of conversations with Premier Doug Ford, talking about the specific needs of Ontario in general, but also in the GTA. We want to be partners in the progress that the city desperately needs to improve the quality of life of its citizens. Just to tell you a very short anecdote, when I traveled to Mississauga as a kid growing up to visit my relatives, we'd often take the GO train from Union Station out to Port Credit. We'd drive in sometimes, depending. We got to Toronto in different ways. But we often stayed in Mississauga. You know, all my aunts and uncles lived out there, and sometimes we'd come into the X or to a Jays game. But we often just stayed in Mississauga. I come from Regina, much smaller city, much different challenges when it comes to infrastructure. When I was running for the leadership of the party, all of a sudden I'd have a meeting in Brampton, and then I'd have another meeting in Markham, and then I had to get back to Mississauga for an event. I'd pop into downtown for another type of an event, and I realized that people in Toronto spend an incredible amount of time in their cars in traffic. When you come to Regina, if you ask me how long does it take to get to the airport, I'd tell you 10 minutes. If you ask me how long it takes to get from where I live in the north part of the city to downtown, it's 10 minutes. If you in rush hour, maybe 12. If there's a train, maybe 14. But so we have different challenges, but it's a quality of life issue. When moms and dads are taking their kids to school or activities, when they have to wake up at 5:30, be in the car by 6:30 just to get to work on time, that's a quality of life issue. And Conservatives will make those investments so that there's a mix of ways to address that. Yes, public transit. Yes, important public transit measures that will speed up waste times, expansions on things like the GO train, like increased public transit services, but also recognizing that a lot of people move around by cars. And the war on the car has to end. We have to have a government that makes those investments to make it easier to drive in a city like Toronto so we can get goods and services faster and get from one part of the city to the other in a more efficient way.
Hi, Andrew. Jim. I'm a strong supporter. As you know, I'm a pilot, and so I have a question on aviation policy. The first question is, what would you do to strengthen the Royal Canadian Air Force to fight ISIS? And the second question is, what would you do to bring in the F-35 plane to help Israel fight Iran?
Well, thank you very much for your question. Look, we were calling on this government to give the men and women in the armed forces the equipment they need. I'd like to take this opportunity just to highlight once again the great addition to our team of Leona Alislev, someone who definitely voted Liberal in 2015, but is not voting Liberal in 2019. But Leona has brought a wealth of experience from her past position in the RCAF, someone who actually did procurement for a living in our armed forces, who served her country proudly. We thank her for her service, and we welcome her expertise on this file. We have a situation right now where this Liberal government has decided to replace 40-year-old F-18s with 40-year-old F-18s. That's not a way to give our men and women the support they need. I can't imagine what it was like to be the captain in the Australian Air Force when he got that phone call saying that Canada was going to buy their 40-year-old jets. They must have popped the champagne corks that night when they were able to sell us their 40-year-old jets. We believe in giving the men and women who put their life on the line the very best. They deserve the very best. They deserve a government that stands behind them. We're now on what, the third iteration of the Liberal procurement plan, the third go at trying to replace the jets. They've wasted hundreds of millions of dollars resetting the process time and time again. Our process asked the armed forces what they needed to get the job done. We took their recommendation. They said, we told them this is our objective as a country, this is what we'd like to be able to do, how we can support our NATO partners, and they said, well, if that's what you want us to do, this is the equipment we need. I believe that when our armed forces tell us that, we should give them the very best. And so when we bring in a procurement plan, it will be designed to do just that, not delay years and years and replace old equipment with old equipment, but to give them the very latest and greatest type of technology. And I also believe it's time that we try to depoliticize the procurement process. Because what happens, what I've noticed over the past, my lifetime of paying attention to politics from the '93 election on, is that you have governments come up with a plan, work in collaboration with our partners, and sometimes there's sticker shock for the equipment. These jets and ships, and army equipment, they cost a lot of money. So the sticker shock often gives another political party the ability to go through an election campaign paying for their promises by sacrificing the equipment that is meant to be given to the armed forces. I'd like to depoliticize that project so that election after election we don't repeat these cycles. And that means working with the other political parties on the front end to get buy-in from that and say, look, this is something that all Canadians can agree on, supporting our armed forces. So let's not have this become a political football during an election campaign being used as a way to pay for other types of promises. Let's all try to find a way to get agreement on the front end. Our senior NATO partners do this. The UK and the US, they have a different approach where procurement is depoliticized, and that will allow us to have a longer-term approach and truly give the men and women in the armed forces the very best.
Thank you. Say your name, please.
Okay, my name is Mr. Liu. Okay, so only 1 minute. So will the Conservative Party discuss, let each party which advocates accepting irregular or unlawful immigrants pay 10% of their expenses by itself, and let that party top officials receive 0.1% irregular immigrants to his or her personal home. Will the Conservative Party discuss this?
Well,
Who becomes the major party?
our preferred approach is to end the process, end the problem of illegal border crossings in the first place. That is the key. You know, there's a lot of different ways that we can welcome people from around the world. The previous Conservative government put a great emphasis on private sponsorships because there are so many communities. Many people in this room I've recognized from other meetings are involved in their community, involved in their church, involved in their mosque, or involved in their synagogue. And they would like to bring, or their temple, and they'd like to bring people over. And they have the people in their community that have the resources that would say, hey, look, we'll put some money into an account. We'll help someone learn English. We'll bring them to get their driver's license. We'll take them help them integrate into Canada. And the success rate for private sponsorships is much, much higher than the government-assisted process. And yet this Liberal government, for reasons that are unclear to me, have reduced the number of private sponsorships. And as a result, we've seen the success rate for things like integration and employment fall. So a Conservative government would work with those communities that want to do it out of the goodness of their heart or their beliefs or of their dedication to their community. But it starts with making sure that people have confidence in our immigration system. It starts with ensuring the integrity of our borders so that people can come to Canada the right way, that our policies, that our immigration system is based on fairness and compassion. That's the Conservative vision for immigration and refugees.
Good evening, Andrew. My name is Roy, and I'm a fellow Westerner. I used to live in Vancouver for over 20 years, and I'm glad to be in Toronto now. I live in Yvonne Robertson's riding. I'm glad to have escaped Vancouver because they have 3 levels of stupidity now: municipality, provincial, and federal. I only have to deal with one. So, by the way, I was speaking to a very good friend of yours from Moose Jaw, Joe Moffat, this morning. He said hello. And I also came here 30 years ago as an immigrant from a very bad part of the world, and I built a very good life for myself, and it's a tremendous country, and I hate to see the degradation of this under this Liberal government. I am currently an executive of a largest independent money manager in the country. We manage assets for folks like these in the room, especially retirement plans and all that stuff. And my question to you is, there is a 13% tax on investments. I find that very unfair because every single one of us here, including myself, have paid the taxes to save money. And we are facing a crisis in the country, around the globe, in terms of people living longer, as a result, having more money in retirement plans to fund their retirement so they can have a comfortable retirement life to the end of life. So 13% on saved money, taxes on it, to me is unconscionable. To give perspective on how much this is, we have a total number of employees of 1,800 people across the country. Our total payroll is smaller than the 13% the government charges between provincial and federal. What would you do as the Prime Minister to alleviate, at least reduce, or get rid of the tax so that every one of us here can have a better retirement?
Well, thank you very much for the question. I'm assuming you're talking about the HST that's charged on investments and on people who are using financial planners, and yeah. So let me just start off by saying that the Conservative Party has always been at the forefront of innovative ways to encourage and reward people for saving. It was our government that brought in the tax-free savings account, which was used by millions of Canadians across the country. Recognizing that when you allow people to save for themselves, you give them more options, more freedom, more economic choices, and that always leads to better results. The Liberal approach has been to slash the TFSAs, drastically reduce people's ability to save within that vehicle. I can tell you I've heard this specific issue at many different roundtables and listening to very different people who are experts in how to get savings increased. I can tell you that it is something that we are looking at. We're looking at a variety of options to encourage personal savings, to encourage people and reward people who will put some money aside for the future and to self-fund their own retirement. This is something that has been brought up. This is something that we are looking at. We are looking all our programs, everything that as we're developing our platform, is all focused on a few key principles. One of those overriding principles is, are we making life more affordable for Canadians? And when we're talking about taxing people for savings, it's a great argument to say that when you tax something, you're not encouraging people to do more of it. So this is the type of thing, this is the lens we're looking at. We are looking at that specific issue, and I'm excited to unveil our platform that speaks to helping people save for their future, for their retirement.
We have Fabriel with us. 30 seconds, because we want to see the lineup is huge. Lineup is just keep it 30 seconds so we can talk.
I'll keep it short. Hi, I live in this riding, Don Valley North. I help Sarah Fisher canvassing. So the Liberal government claimed that they are evidence-based government, but then the immigration minister called Ontario Social Minister Lisa MacLeod and Canadian for quoting City of Toronto number about asylum seekers that live in homeless shelter in Toronto. During campaign, as a conservative, how can we keep a civil debate when Liberals will call us racist and Canadian whenever we are quoting facts number?
This is a fantastic question. Thank you. I've always believed that the way you know that you're winning an argument with a Liberal is when they hurl personal insults at you. when they don't argue the facts, but they start to demean those people who disagree with them. And I'm very disappointed when I see the divisive and nasty rhetoric coming from senior Liberal ministers. You pointed out about the immigration minister calling Lisa MacLeod, the Ontario minister, un-Canadian for daring just to ask a question about what the costs of the immigration policy is having on the City of Toronto and on the province of Ontario. Bill Morneau, the finance minister, sat at a committee in Parliament. You know, this is Justin Trudeau's government. Justin Trudeau, who speaks a lot about gender equality and speaking and civil debate and respect, called Lisa Raitt, our deputy leader, a Neanderthal for disagreeing with the economic policies of this Liberal government. We asked very serious and meaningful questions on Justin Trudeau's handling of the terrible situation of Tory Stafford's killer. When Terry Lynn McClintock, who brutally murdered 9-year-old Tory Stafford, was transferred to a healing lodge, we asked questions about why this government was allowing that to happen. And Justin Trudeau called us ambulance chases. So this is how we know that we're winning the arguments, is when they throw these mean, nasty, and personal attacks at us. But we're going to stay focused on the issues. We're going to win the battle of ideas by presenting the facts and by sticking to evidence, because I know that Canadians recognize that divisive and nasty tone when they see it, and they will support a government that is actually campaigning on policies and ideas and trying to win people over, not attack and insult them.
Thank you, Andrew. Good evening. Thank you for being here. My name's Mark Walsh. I'm from the Willowdale riding. So my question is really about climate change. I fully agree with your comments on the carbon tax. It won't do any good. It's just posturing. But what is the Conservative Party position on climate change, and what, if anything, would you as a government do in terms of climate change? Because a lot of people see it as an important issue. And to say that no carbon tax is like what we won't do. What will we do? We need a positive message out there.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. It is an important issue. When we talk about making life better for the next generation of Canadians, the environment is perhaps the key part of that, because it doesn't matter what economic prosperity is like if you can't drink the water, if you can't breathe the air, if you can't enjoy the natural beauty that Canada has been blessed with, or indeed the world. The reason why we focus so much on the carbon tax is because we have to make sure that people are aware that the carbon tax is not an environmental plan. When the Liberals get up and say, well, where's your plan? My question back is, where's your plan? Because the carbon tax has been proven to be a cash grab, not an environmental plan. When we see reports saying that it won't have a meaningful effect on reducing emissions, but it will drive up the cost of commuting, of purchasing goods, of heating your home in the winter, we're focused on that from an economic perspective because it is not an environmental plan. When Conservatives, when we unveil our plan, I can tell you, it'll be based on a few key principles. One is to reward reductions, not punish commuters. It will be based on incentivizing large emitters to reduce their emissions and rewarding individual choices for Canadians. Things like making it easier to invest in making your home more energy efficient. Things like recognizing the great advancements that we've made as a country. Industry in Canada making huge advancements in reducing emissions. And also taking credit for what Canada does well here. You know, we don't do the world any favors if we bring in a tax that chases away investments and jobs and factories shut down in Canada only to pop up in other countries without environmental standards, without access to clean technology, without access to clean power. We're not better off as a planet when we do that. So recognizing that we can do things here in Canada at a lower rate of emissions than in places like China or India where they don't have access to things like hydro. For example, we can make aluminum here in Canada at a fraction of the emissions that aluminum is made in China, because we use, for the most part, clean hydroelectricity in provinces like Quebec. And in China, they're using coal-powered electrical plants. So we're not better off if there's 2 or 3 new ones popping up in China at the expense of jobs and investment here in Canada. We'll actually end up with more global emissions. So having an environmental plan that recognizes the contributions Canada has already made, the investments we've already made, and with a credible plan to reduce those emissions further is a key part of the Conservative vision for fighting climate change.
Ladies and gentlemen, we also have another candidate as thanks to the 15 centimeter snow. It's Scott Chaudhary, Black Creek, Humberville. Thank you. Jack Davidson, 30 seconds.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask about something that your close ally, Mr. Ford, did this week. He chose to make deep cuts to OSAP that are going to hurt people who are trying to build better lives for themselves. You talk a lot about hardworking Canadians, and I wonder if you would share Mr. Ford's approach to cutting and to specifically cutting people's education.
Well, from what I've read, Premier Ford has made a variety of changes that's aimed at making it easier for low-income Ontarians to access those types of programs. I can tell you from a federal perspective, our plan will be to have stable funding for post-secondary for provincial governments, where the federal government is responsible for partnering with the provinces to deliver post-secondary. Our commitment is to have those stable levels. What I will applaud, absolutely, so as I say, the details as I've learned about them has been that the changes have actually been made to make it easier for low-income people in Ontario to access those very loan programs. The other thing that he did that I have to say, as a student of an Ontario university myself, I'm a graduate of the University of Ottawa, making student dues voluntary is a great recognition and giving individual students choice in where their dollars go to. When I went through the University of Ottawa, they didn't ask my opinion about what the student union was spending my money on, and I didn't have a choice in paying a lot of these fees and dues. And I think that giving choice to Ontario students is an excellent start to making our universities more democratic, and it ties in nicely with my commitment to making free speech on campus a priority for Conservative government federally.
Hi there, good evening, Mr. Scheer. My name is Ryan McKee. I live in the Toronto area, and in my non-work time, I'm a passionate volunteer with an agency related to the Toronto Police Service. So my question concerns crime. In every major city in Canada, we have seen an uptick in violent crime, whether it's murders, homicides, drug trafficking, and other crime that's very important and impacts many people, like impaired driving, and a very unfortunate situation in Toronto being the largest centre for human trafficking in Canada. My question is the following. What is your position on what happens to criminals when they're arrested, how long they're held in custody, sentences, but also resources to support our men and women who are out there in weather like we're having tonight, protecting our citizens across the country, whether it's violent crime or just general police situations that impact all of us? So I want to know about, when people are arrested, what happens, but also sentences, but also resourcing for police and community agencies.
Well, thank you very much again for the question. We could have an entire town hall devoted just to that subject about criminal justice. And it is the primary duty of government to keep its citizens safe. And, as a father of 5 children myself, I want them to be able to go to the park without worrying about whether or not they're going to come back. And there are too many incidences in the GTA where people have innocent bystanders, in many cases young students, have been victims, in some cases leading to tragic deaths because they were caught in between gang activity or other types of illegal operations. So that's a primary motivator for me as we develop our justice policy. It's always about putting the rights of victims and the rights of law-abiding Canadians first. That has to be the foundational principle of any justice system. I think the key for any type of approach when it comes to sentencing is to recognize the difference between first-time offenders and repeat dangerous offenders. People who have committed the same crime over and over again, who are clearly involved in a criminal organization or in a gang, have to face tougher consequences than first-time offenders. And we seem to have a government that's going down the exact opposite road. There's actually a bill in Parliament right now that lowers the penalties for dangerous crimes, for violent acts, major types of crimes. We reject that. We believe that there needs to be meaningful sentences for those types of crimes. Also, we need to recognize that there are gaps in terms of resources. We had a Supreme Court ruling that put a cap on the length of time that trials could take. Well, the Liberal government has failed to appoint judges to those vacancies to actually allow those trials to occur. So we've had reports and instances where people who are accused of very violent acts, sexual assaults, violent attacks, are being set free because there haven't been enough judicial capacity to actually hear the cases and prosecute them. That has to stop. The Conservative Party will appoint those judges and will make those investments so that we can get those accused offenders to trial so they can be held accountable for their crimes. We also need to institute a wide variety of things. I've unveiled a plan to make our community safer. That includes going after illegal guns, giving our border services agencies more tools to go after illegal firearms and traffickers that bring that in, to name criminal organizations as criminal organizations so that Crown prosecutors don't have to prove time and time again that groups like the Hells Angels are actually a gang. That will lead to speedier trials and more convictions for gang activity. A whole host of options as well, including investing in local police resources as well. It's part of our comprehensive plan. I wish I had more time to go into greater detail, but you'll be hearing a lot more about it as we get closer to the election.
Thank you, Andrew. We have Jeremy Golan.
Thank you, sir. So I believe the last election, Mr. Trudeau won because of one issue, not as marijuana. Most people showed up who are young over that one issue. Now we have a new election happening in October. How can you give young people a reason to show up? What can you do to rebrand this party and make it exciting and hip? How can we change the culture to make Conservatives the people we really are? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this is a great question because clearly the Conservative Party failed to connect with young people in the same way that the Liberals did in the last election. I don't think that will come as a shock to anybody here. I'll tell you, what I've been hearing a lot from young people on a few issues, these are some issues that I believe the Liberals are taking the support from young Canadians for granted, because there's a few issues that are causing a lot of anxiety for young people in Canada today. The first is housing affordability. I talk to so many young people who say, I don't know how I'm going to be able to afford to buy the type of home that I grew up in. And this Liberal government has made changes to the way that young people can access mortgages, pushing that dream of home ownership further and further away from young people as it's harder and harder to qualify for mortgages. You know, I grew up in a family that had to have CMHC insurance for our mortgage. We know what it's like to, so many Canadians know what it's like to have to qualify for mortgages. And yes, there's a need to have rules around what types of mortgages are available, but the drastic approach that this government took on mortgages soon into their government has caused a lot of hardship for Canadians. So that is a huge issue, and our plan will speak to making homes more affordable in Canada, not just by dealing with the demand side. Yes, absolutely, make it easier to qualify for mortgages, making it easier to save, rewarding people who are saving for their first home, that's going to be part of it too, but also recognizing that a key point in terms of lowering the cost of homes is to increase the supply as well. And making it easier for new units to come onto the market will have a positive impact on the housing market as well. Deficits are really, really annoying to young people because they pay it back. These mad $30 billion, over $250 billion of new debt being accumulated today means the next generation of Canadians have to pay all that back. You know, your generation, my generation, the generation of many people in this room, we're still paying back the debt from the first Trudeau government, and we don't want to leave more debt to the future Canadians, so we're going to end this Trudeau government's habit of passing on that debt to the next generation. And then a wide variety... You know, I just mentioned it, but when we talk to young people, a policy that is really resonating with young people in this country is the free speech on campus policy. Because there are lots of people of different political persuasions going through university, learning about the world, and pursuing a course of study. And the universities are the place where you're supposed to have debate, where you're supposed to argue with one another, where someone's supposed to get up and say something that's controversial, that's unorthodox, and argue with their professor, or have a professor that challenges the classroom. And when we see so many universities where that isn't allowed to take place because a small group of people will shut down legitimate debate or try to prevent someone coming to give their point of view, and those types of policies really resonate with young people. So housing affordability, balanced budgets so we're not borrowing from their future earnings, and promoting and protecting free speech on campus are a few ideas that we have that will connect with young people.
And before our next question, I'd just like to acknowledge another nominated Conservative candidate for Scarborough Centre, Irshad Chaudhry.
Thank you so much.
Your question, ma'am.
Hello. I'm a constituent of Don Valley West, and to me, the key issue for this coming election is the environment. I was glad to hear you say that one of the fundamental concerns of the government is to keep its people safe. And my understanding is that fundamental to that is environmental legislation. Could you speak a little about how you would consider the possibility of introducing federal legislation around the right to a healthy environment?
Well, I think that is an excellent idea, and that is something that, as we develop our policies, is absolutely ingrained in a lot of the decisions that we're looking at in our platform. The environment is more than one particular issue. There are so many aspects of it. It's water, it's soil, it's parks, it's conservation. Yes, it's emissions, CO2 emissions as well. It's climate change. It's a lot of different aspects rolled into one. And that's why it's important that every government department that is looking at providing a service to Canadians or making an investment has to have that view. Now, there are existing rules and laws that force that to happen. You know, we have environmental reviews that are triggered automatically for so many different types of large projects. There are ways that the municipal and provincial governments work together with the feds to ensure that new developments meet very high standards. And I'll be announcing some policies in the very near future that speak to those practical aspects of Canadians' interaction with their environment. So stay tuned. There's some coming in the very, very short term, near future that we'll be proud to announce. And it's building on the Conservative legacy. You know, the Liberals are very good at symbolism. They're very good at talking the talk. They're very good at using the buzzwords, getting their picture taken, and government by Instagram. But it's conservative governments that have actually delivered real change and real investments in the environment. It was Brian Mulroney who was recognized as the greenest prime minister because of his action to fight acid rain. It was the previous conservative government's investment in things like wastewater treatment plants so that cities and municipalities aren't dumping raw sewage into our lakes and rivers. It's the previous conservative government that brought in strict standards on all different types of emissions. So we're going to build on that. It's going to be a key part of our environmental platform going forward.
Thank you, Andrew. We have Grace from North York. Grace, here we go.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Scheer. You said you are hearing from people, yes, we must win. Well, I'm with those people. You must win. So how do you win? We need you to be out there. We need the whole electorate to see you. Nobody... I read a lot of newspapers. I read everything. I see everything. I don't hear enough from you. And I'm so happy this evening because I really enjoyed what you have to say and how you say it. But all of the people, all of the voters have to hear it. We are told the next election will be fought on 3 things: cap and trade, pipelines, immigration. The voters, not just conservative voters, don't know you and don't know where you stand on these issues. When will you really come out? When will you do? When you do, you should make your policies really clear. People may be fed up with Trudeau, but they need a solid alternative. I want to hear from you in the media.
Thank you, Grace.
I appreciate the question. The 2 pieces of feedback I get most often when I travel across the country. First is, I didn't realize you were so tall. That's the first thing people say to me when they meet me. And then the second thing they say is, you need to get out more. You need to get out more. Well, I usually challenge, on the first one I say, yes, I'm 6'4", I guess the camera doesn't show it as much as I thought it would. On the second, I challenge them a little bit because wherever I am in Canada, whether it's in Halifax, St. John's, Vancouver, Edmonton, here in Don Valley or across the GTA, when I get the second piece, I would say, well, I'm out there right now. I'm currently out there. We have a wide variety of tools to get our message out. I have an extensive travel schedule. I am literally on the road at least 3 or 4 days every week when I'm not in Ottawa, holding the government to account in the House of Commons. I do lots and lots of media interviews, very accessible to get our message out. I can assure you, we're only going to increase that. We're going to be investing a lot more resources in getting me out. My wife and I had a talk before the end of the year. I said, we've had an aggressive schedule going into all throughout 2017 and 2018, but 2019 is the sprint to the finish. So we've come to terms with the fact that I'm going to be on the road an awful lot, and we're going to deal with that on a family perspective. But I understand it's very important to get our message out, to get that positive alternative vision in front of as many Canadians as we possibly can. We don't all, the opposition always has this challenge. The Prime Minister can make news just by showing up in many cases. It's a little bit harder for the Leader of the Opposition, no matter what the party he or she is in, to do just that. So we're going to compensate for that by using a wide variety of tools, social media. We do everything from Facebook town halls to town halls like these to videos on different types of social media. We're going to continue to do that as well as questioning the government in the House of Commons, answering questions from the media and from the public. So I can guarantee you're going to see a lot. You're going to see an increased investment in doing just that in the coming months. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm Ian. I'm like Yvonne Robertson, I'm an entrepreneur in Don Valley West. I'm also a millennial, so I keep everything on my phone, including this question, so just bear with me. So whether you're more concerned about energy independence, climate change, or the economy, one thing that everyone should be able to agree on is that innovation in our energy industry is needed. But building anything new in the energy industry takes a lot of investment and a lot of time. Energy projects are big projects. And as someone who's actually building I'm building a tech company that works in the energy industry, I've seen firsthand that investors that could be helping us innovating our energy infrastructure are running from Canada. They're running because getting the right to build large infrastructure projects is now a political process and not a legal process, one that can be revoked at any time for any reason under any administration. The consequence of this is that we are locked into the status quo. The projects that have already been built and the ones that are not good for our economy, they're not good for our geopolitical goals, they're not even good for our climate goals. So how can your government restore confidence that Canada is a good place to invest in energy innovation and new infrastructure so that we can improve our economy, improve our environment, and do things like get our shale gas to the world to displace coal, which ultimately will reduce global emissions like it did in the US?
I think you've hit the nail on the head for one of the key crises that Canada is facing right now, and that is we went from a country where other companies and other countries were fighting to get their investment dollars into Canada, and now they can't get their investment dollars out of Canada quick enough. And this came to a head with Kinder Morgan. You know, here we had a company, an American-based company, who is willing to put in billions of dollars of their investors' money into a Canadian project. And after being delayed to death, they finally said, look, we don't have confidence in this system. We don't have confidence in this country. And what was Justin Trudeau's response to that? It wasn't to fix the problem. It wasn't to create a clear path to getting the project built. It was to give them $4.5 billion of Canadian tax dollars so that that company can make investments in other countries that compete with us. That's not an energy policy, ladies and gentlemen. That is a disastrous approach to a key economic engine of this country. We had a process that got 4 major pipeline projects built under the previous Conservative government, increasing our capacity to get our energy to markets by over 1 million barrels a day. And you're right, this has moved from, someone asked a question earlier about an evidence-based decision-making process. Well, this process under this Liberal government is now a political process where they pick and choose which projects they will allow to proceed based on things other than the evidence. So the best example of this is when they imposed a double standard on the Energy East project, forcing Energy East, which would have taken Western Canadian energy to Eastern Canadian markets, displacing foreign oil in Atlantic Canada. They put a double standard where the pipeline proponent had to account for both upstream and downstream emissions. No other industry in Canada had to account for that. And as a result, the proponents walked away. They canceled Northern Gateway, which was a project that would open up Asian markets because that was a route to deep water ports, which would actually give us access to India, to China. They could have seen that project through. And they've bought Trans Mountain with no plan to build Trans Mountain. So I've unveiled a plan that will speak to these issues, that will restore confidence in our system, fast-tracking all jurisdictional questions to the Supreme Court of Canada so that we can get clarity on key questions, bringing in federal legislation that clearly defines federal jurisdiction to make sure that these projects can be built, and eliminating foreign funding from advocacy groups who appear before our hearings process. I am happy to have a debate with anybody in Canada about our energy policy and about the way that we need to get our energy to market. I respect the right for people to protest, to express their views when they're opposed to it. But I believe that those conversations should be had by Canadians and not by other interests in other countries supporting groups that are solely designed to block projects here in Canada.
Thank you, Andrew. We're going to take 2 more questions from this side. Our leader's flight is 9 o'clock, so just keep this in mind.
It might take a little bit longer to get to Pearson tonight than
David Marshall is here.
David Marshall, Mr. Scheer, all government administrations in Canada, from Confederation onwards, whether Liberal or PC or Conservative, have sadly failed Canada's First Nations. As many people know, Canada ranks 6th on the UN Development Index, and First Nations reserves rank 63rd. At nearly 152 years since Confederation, the time to act is now. If you're elected, and we all hope you will be, What will your government do in 4 years to help First Nations pull themselves out of poverty? Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Well, this is absolutely a priority and a very important responsibility for governments of all political stripes. And you're right to point out the challenges that have faced parties of all political stripes since Confederation. It was a Conservative government that recognized the historic abuse in the residential school system and compensated survivors of that. It's a Conservative government that brought in targets for things like clean water and metrics to ensure that investments in education were actually going to improve the quality of education on reserve. I have 12 reserves in my riding. The chief of the AFN, Perry Bellegarde, comes from one of them. We've met each other several times, come from the same part of Saskatchewan. And I've sat down with him and I said, look, I want to do exactly what you said. I want to develop a way where we can be partners together so that economic growth can benefit First Nations Canadians as well. And this brings me to a specific point to link back to the energy conversation. You know, these big projects like Northern Gateway, like Trans Mountain, have the support of many, many, many First Nations communities. And they want to partner in that. They want to have access to jobs. They want to share in some of the profits. They've signed these types of resource agreements. And that's why it's vitally important that we develop these types of things so that those First Nations Canadians living in rural and remote areas can tap into the wealth of natural resources that this country has. And that